Hello, this is Houston, and welcome to our third week of the 2D design course. And in this video, as I promised, we are going to do something out of the knowledge that we accumulate on the first 2 weeks. And just a quick reminder: this is the third week of the practical lab thing. And on the first 2 weeks, we saw the basic things that I need you to know to be able to do your project. Okay. As I said before, Photoshop is quite complex. It's a very robust software. It allows you to do a lot of things, and you just have to combine selections, layers, by the way, is something extremely important, so you have to be very comfortable dealing with layers, and of course a little bit of blend modes to make your life easier in certain moments. Okay, today we are going to use all of those things, and we are going to do something more practical. Okay, so this week the focus is to talk a little bit about our first practical project, which is called the poster. And I have some small topics to talk about before we move on to the practical example. Okay, so first of all, we are going to talk about some types of posters, a little bit about structure and layout, and some key insights about the act of creating posters, which, by the way, is something I would say old. The idea of creating posters is something that goes back to the 40s, and even before that. So it's something that we've been doing for quite some time now. And even though some people believe that at some point we are going to stop doing posters, here we are, and we're still doing posters, and we're still printing posters, and it's quite amazing. So that's why I decided to start with this first project. Okay, and second, because of course this is a very good idea to put in practice some techniques and to use the tool to create something tangible. Okay, so first of all, the types of posters, and then we are going to, of course, talking about the structure and layout, and then some key elements that you can see on pretty much every single poster or movie poster. But of course, there's not only movie posters, right? So you can do posters for events. You can do posters to work with different types of applications. Okay. And a little bit about typography, just so you know how to use this thing. So it's really hard to talk about typography because depending on what you have on your posters, you are going to need probably a different type of font to try to express what you are trying to say. And then we are going to jump to our practical example. And in this case, I chose to do a poster for an event. Okay, that might not be your case, and I'm going to explain that on the practical classes during the week, because I would like you to do something more close to cinema. Okay, I promise that I'm going to explain that during the classes, so don't worry about that right now. First of all, there are basically three types of posters, and the most common one is called one-sheet movie poster, which is the classic format. So you have all the informations in just one place, and the title, and the actor or actors, the main actors, and usually at the bottom of the poster you have a lot of information. It's a very condensed part with a lot of names, and some of those names they have some degree of relevancy, and of course there's a lot of other elements. Okay, so this is the most common type of poster. We call this thing one sheet movie poster or one sheet poster. Okay, There's also a second type which is called teaser poster. On a teaser, you don't want to give a lot of information. Actually, you almost don't want to give nothing. Just the title of the piece. You try to sell the main idea. So you try to create some sort of expectation on the audience. So when they see the poster, they kind of try to guess what is going on. So what is this thing? So I'm a legend, or Jurassic Park, and this thing is quite common. Okay, and I'm pretty sure that you already saw that. If you like games, for example, they usually do this kind of thing when they are about to release a new game. The big companies like Ubisoft and so on, they kind of try to create a certain mood towards this new release. So they change the social media identity, but they don't give you a lot of information. So this is the same idea behind a teaser poster. Okay, this is fairly common. And the third type is the wild posting, which is something. It's a poster, but at the same time, it's a different format. It's always a different format. It's almost like a new application of the poster. Okay, so those three things are basically the most important formats, and you can understand this wild posting as also applications on outdoor applications. So, for example, billboards, buildings, outdoor application in general. Okay, so when it comes to structure, let's talk about structure because I think this is super important. This is Paris Je t'aime. It's a very cool movie. And if you try to understand the movie just looking into the posters, and if you watch the movie, of course, everything is obvious when you have all the information, right? But if you do not watch the movie and you try to guess what is going on, that's the catch thing about the poster. So he tries to give you something without giving you too much. He tries to tell a story. So that's why I love so much movie posters, because they always try to give you something to hold on, something to understand what is the piece without giving you too much or spoilers or this kind of thing. Sometimes it's a interpretation or a different view of the movie. Okay, but ignore the thing right now and pay attention to the structure, because I think this is the most important thing for us right now, and this is what I'm going to talk about. Okay, so in when it comes to structure, there's always a picture or a graphic thing, which by the way do not need to be a photo. So for example, in this case, it's not a photo, okay? And you have the title of the movie and you have the credits, but you can also see around the poster. So in this particular case, you can also see around the poster a lot of names. And there's the director, producers, writers, and all the important people involved on this project. Okay, they're not going to give credits to everybody because it's impossible to fit on this space, but the most important people and the most important companies related with this project, with this product, they are there. Okay, another very cool example, Oblivion. The same formats. You have like a catchy design, a image, something post-apocalyptic, and you have the actor before the name of the product, and you have the name of the movie, and then you have the name of the people involved in the product, in the project and the movie itself. Sometimes you have dates. If this poster was released, which by the case is the most common thing, if the poster is released way before the premiere, sometimes they do a different type of poster. They kind of ignore the date, and this is fairly common. So imagine, for example, the last 007. They kind of postponed the release of the latest James Bond movie several times. So if the poster had some sort of date, I'm not going to say that this is a bad thing necessarily, because nobody has a fault in this case. It's just a situation that we are living, but still, it's a piece of useless information. Okay, so just try to think about that. It depends not on you, but on the client, of course. So if you have something like a demand, so I need a date because this is for a event, you have to put the date. So this is one of the informations that you have to put, like it or not. This is Moonlight. As you can see, if you watch the video, which by the way is an awesome video, it follows the same approach, and we have literally some sort of collage with different people, and they have something very, very interesting, because if you watch the movie, you are going to understand the poster. It's kind of giving you the information on the wrong order, I would say, but at the same time, it tries to give you something about the movie, tries to draw your attention. Okay. And the last one, Inglorious Bastards, which by the way is awesome. And but pay attention to the structure. Okay, that is a graphic, some photos, and a focal point, which is very common on posters. Is a singular focal point, and usually it's in the middle of the piece, and there is the credits, and there is the name of the product, and sometimes a catchy phrase about the product, and a bunch of credits. Basically, this is the structure, okay? And this structure follows a hierarchy. So for example, we have here the title, which is the probably most important information, because it's the name of the product, and then a tagline, and then we have the name of the actors or the people involved in this thing, and then we have the credits, and of course at the end you can add some other information, but they're not vital, but you can see this information there, like they usually like to use things like, oh, this movie is from the director of another very famous movie. I hope so, because otherwise this would be useless information. Okay. And sometimes they cite the producers, because the producers, they have a big role on the movie industry, of course. And I didn't show this thing here with a number, but on the back of all of those things, there is always a graphic, okay? Which, once again, do not need to be a photo. You can use other things on this background. But key insights, so you need to keep that in mind, okay? Poster design is a long process. Sometimes it looks very obvious, very simple. So for example, here in the left, we have Joker. Again, another great movie with Joaquin Phoenix. But looks like simple, but it's not. It's about design principles being applied. So if we study movie posters, you are going to see a lot of design principles that fine artists use to apply on their paintings, for example. But that's the thing. There are design rules. So design basics is going to give you this support to be able to create this kind of thing. The second thing to keep in mind is a poster is a sales tool and not fine art. So you have to be aware of the amount of complexity that you try to put on this piece. Okay, We want to sell an idea. We want to give an information. Okay, this is one of the reasons that I chose a type of poster that is very close to most of the works I did. I never worked on a poster for a movie, but I worked for a lot of posters for plays, musicals, and other things, and posters for other types of events, not only cultural events, but also posters for companies and this kind of thing. So it's exactly the same thing. You have to think about trying to attract the attention of people to something that is going to happen eventually, or to give some information, or to try to sell a product, or that's the thing. It's a tool. Okay, so be careful with the amount of complexity that you try to convey on a poster, because this is a little bit dangerous. Okay, and poster is a data-driven design. It's all about data-driven design. So you need information, and you need to use this information as best as you can to sell this piece. Okay, and design should create instant impact, and this thing kind of goes against the second phrase, but at the same time they are not fighting. I guarantee that. So the impact means that this image, this piece at the end needs to draw some attention, and to do that we should be aware of what we are doing. It's not only about putting things together. Okay, there's a lot of things that we can use to provoke this effect, to increase this impact, or to make people pay attention to the things we are doing. Okay, and most of those things you are going to learn on design basics. I'm going to talk about some of them, but since we don't have a lot of time, I'll try to skip this thing. But if you have any questions, if you want to know more about this, I am always available to talk about. Okay, so on the bottom of the poster you see a lot of information. So for example, the leading off, the presented by whatever, you have the cast, you have the crew, you have the producers, the writers. Okay, how this thing is so important, right? It is, and it's not only because people are doing this for quite some time, you know. I'm going to show you some examples, and you will notice that this thing is almost a template, right? They are doing this thing for quite some time, and there's of course strong reasons for that. So one of the reasons is the producers. They are very important for the final movie, the final piece, the final product. But the writers, they are important. The director is very important, and there is a hierarchy on this information, or the way this information is presented to you. Okay, so let's talk briefly about that, because I think this is super important. So for example, this is Interstellar, one of my favorite movies. As you can see, the building block have a lot of companies around. So the companies, they appear before the name of the movie. So because the companies, they are important for some reason, they think, okay, they are even more important than Christopher Nolan. It's quite amazing. So before I'm talking about the product itself, I talk about the companies that made the product, or you know, it's quite interesting. And Christopher Nolan appears more than once. You will see that it's not a repeated information. There's nothing wrong about that, but it's because he's doing different things. He have different roles on the movie, and there's a hierarchy to present this information. Here you can see the classic Superman poster, and the actors involved on the movie, they are so important that they decided to put the actors before the title of the movie. I mean the title, the name of the movie, not the logo on the top. Okay, so Gene Hackman and Marlon Brando, they are extremely important. Back then, they were already very famous, so they decided to put the guys before the name of the product as a way to kind of sell this thing. And by the way, Christopher Reeve was famous, but not as famous as Gene Hackman and Marlon Brando, which by the way was already a star back then. This is the credits from Gravity, another incredible movie, in my opinion. And you will see that there is a lot of producers. So the producers are super important. So they decided to put those guys like before other information, before some companies, before the name of the director, for example, which is quite interesting, right? I just brought that because I think this is a way to understand that you do not define that. Who defines the hierarchy of the information is the client, and you have to respect that. But sometimes you get to choose who comes first, and you have to look to the piece, you have to look to the thing you are doing. And if that's the case, so for example, if you're doing a cultural product, there's always someone that you can use to draw attention. The artist itself, the actors, the name of the painter, whatever. Okay. And these days, in some specific types of art, the artist is very important, as important, sometimes even more important than the art itself. Okay. This is one of the final examples. This is Alien Covenant. As you can see, there's a lot of writers involved in this piece. And the film is, by the way, horrible, but still we have a lot of writers. There's also other information. So for example, the studio and website info, and this thing goes on the bottom. Okay, so you have to be aware that you need to put a lot of data, a lot of information sometimes on a very small space. Okay, and to do that, you have to use very compressed typography, but there's no standard. Okay, this is not a absolutely rule, but you have to be aware that sometimes when we have to put a lot of things together, we end up having this impression. Okay, it's like sardines inside a can. And to do that, I'm going to suggest you 2 different typographies. There's a lot of them. Okay, those are just 2 ideas. One is called Tall, Dark, and Handsome. It's a free font. If you go to Google and if you look for this typography, you're going to find this thing. You can download for free and you can use on your projects. The other one is called SF Movie Poster, which is also free and you can download and you can use on your own projects. If you need some inspirations for your projects, I would like to suggest you to take a look on the Internet Movie Poster Awards, which is a large collection of posters, and they have very new things every single week. So for example, movies, like new movies, for example, right? You can see the posters and you can see all those things that I showed you on this short introduction, and there's a lot of cool inspirations as well. I'm going to remind you that I'm going to use photos and assets from Unsplash and Pexels. Those are absolutely free and you can use as much as you want to do even professional works. Okay, they have a good resolution. I'm not going to say like incredible, but you can use. You will see what I mean when I start doing things. You will see that even the biggest resolution might not be enough for some specific applications. Okay. Let's talk about the practical thing that I'm going to do, and I'm going to show you like the entire process. Okay. This is a small briefing, so every time we have a project, a practical project, I'm going to present you in the form of a briefing, because this is what we do on the industry. I already told you that on our first class. So the thing is, it's a show. It's a ballet show. It's a modern thing. It's called Dancing Lights, and it's going to happen in one specific day at a specific time, and that is a phone number and a website. They do not have a logo, but the client wants something like a poster for this show. Okay, mandatory things. So the logo of the Landestheater is super important, and the logo of Opera Austria as well. So I'm going, of course, to give you those logos. We are going to talk about them in a moment. Optionally, we can use the websites, but if we don't have space, we don't have to worry about that. Okay. The client wants something modern, something light, something that inspires movement with simple shapes, something very colorful, dynamic background, something like that. And yeah, we can try to use this information. It's not a lot. Sometimes the client gives us almost nothing to go on, but we need to abstract. We need to try to imagine what the client wants. Tangible information, the colors, for example. So we can work with some colors, because this is probably the things that the audience are going to see during the show, right? So we already have the colors, and we have the idea. It's a ballet. It's a modern thing. It's not a classic thing. And sometimes I start trying to find images. Okay, I want some sort of key image, and to do that, I use the idea of mood board. Mood board is something that we put together to try to think about an idea. Okay, and if you see on this mood board, we have a lot of dancers, a lot of people with very strong silhouettes, some classical things as well, because somehow I like the movements, the lightness of the movements. You know, it's very delicate sometimes, and other times I like strong movements, the power of the something heavy flying on the space, and I really like that. But I also want to work with balance. So some of the photos here, they have to do with balance. And I would like to use this information to do the work. Okay. Another very important piece of information, usually when we work with any type of print design, we have to stick with a specific size. Okay, and for posters in general, we use the A3 size, and the equivalent to this thing on United States is the tabloid size, which, by the way, I'm not going to use, because it's kind of absurd that United States, they have their own way of doing things, right? And the rest of the world, they follow the ISO guides, including Europe, including Brazil, of course. And I'm very used to use A3 as a standard for posters. Okay, We are going to talk about resolution. We are going to discuss this thing briefly when I start doing the poster itself. And let's jump to the final thing, which is the logos. Okay, I'm going to provide the logos, and the logos are in SVG format. Okay, just so you know, this is a fairly new format. It's a XML type of image. It's a vector image. It was created to be used on internet, but we can also use this for printing. Okay, we just have to be aware of some specific limitations, but other than that, we can do pretty much anything with SVG files. And Illustrator and Photoshop are totally capable of reading those formats. But if you try to open a SVG file inside Photoshop, Photoshop is going to try to rasterize this vector. Okay, what is rasterize? Rasterize is the act of transforming a vector into pixels. Okay, it's not going to be a vector anymore. But I think this is super important for us, to keep the vector quality of this logo. So I would like to use another approach. Instead of open the SVG format and just use the way we want, I would like to open up this logo in Illustrator. Don't worry, I'm not going to do almost anything with Illustrator. I just want to use Illustrator to copy this content and then paste this content inside Photoshop, because if we do that, there's something that I would like to show you when this kind of thing happens. Okay, so this concludes the things I would like to talk about before we jump into the practical part. So let's go first to the photos, because we need to discover the photos first and take a look on which type of image that we can use to create this thing, and think about the backgrounds. I think the backgrounds, we can follow two different approaches. I'm going to show you those two different approaches. The first one being a image, and the second one something that we can create from scratch. Okay, so let's jump into Photoshop and start doing this thing. Here we are in Photoshop, and I would like to start creating our template and explaining some very important things about some tools that we are going to use to create the things we need to create. Okay, so first of all, you can click here on Create New or go to File, New, and it's pretty much the same thing, or of course Control or Command N to open up this guy here. And as a starting point, we're going to jump into Print, and here on Print we have a lot of presets. If you click here, View All Presets, you will see all the sizes and presets that Photoshop has to offer. Okay, and if you see, every time we try to use Print, Photoshop tries to suggest to use something around 300 ppi, pixels per inch. Okay, and this is the resolution, this is the size, and this is the resolution. Okay, they have a close relationship, I would say. So as I said, we are going to use A3 as a size. But if we use this resolution, we might have some problems with the quality of the images that we need to have in order to keep everything consistent. Another thing that you have to keep in mind is the color mode. So if we are working with print design, we should stick with CMYK, okay? And depending on where you're going to print this thing, they're going to ask you to use a very specific color profile. Okay, this is a little bit off, so let's consider that we are not going to print this piece. First of all, let's go back to RGB. Okay, and by the way, it's always going to be RGB or CMYK. we never use grayscale, never use bitmap, and we never use lab. Lab is just for photos and just for certain types of equipment that do photo printing. So they use this color system as a way to hold the amount of colors that they need to treat, but still they also operate with CMYK from time to time, and they are able to convert RGB to CMYK. You can convert from one mode to another one, but you have to keep in mind that if we work with RGB, the colors are absolutely different than the CMYK system. So in this case, we're going to start with RGB because most of our images, if not all, they're coming from online sources. Eventually, I'm going to work with you a little bit more with CMYK and how to deal with this difference of color systems. Okay, so let's stick with RGB, but always try to remember that. Okay, if you are going to do this as a professional work for printing, you should use CMYK, not RGB at all. And you have to convert everything to CMYK to keep consistencies. Otherwise, you are going to have problems with a lot of difference between the things you see on your screen and the things you are going to print. Okay, let's move on. And in this case, I think 300 is probably too much. As I said, most of the pictures are coming from the internet. They are quite big, but they're not that big. Okay, not big enough, and they do not have 300 pixels of resolution at all. Okay, so this might be a problem because when we bring those images inside our project, you will see a huge difference on the size of the images. So for example, let's jump from millimeters to pixels, and you see that this is the size in pixels. This is still the resolution, but we are showing the size in pixels on a different way. So that means that we need images with 3,000 pixels, almost 5,000 pixels to be able to cover all the spaces, and that means that we need to resize our images. So if we do not have like huge images, I advise you to work with smaller sizes. Okay, those things, they are proportional. I think I showed you a small image with the image sizes. If you think that you are working with a tree and eventually you are going to have problems, you can try to work with a 4, which is smaller, as you can see in the size, compared to a 3, but a 3 is a standard format. Still, if you think that the size of the things or the size of the images are on your way, or you can jump and you can use a 4. So for example, I would like to use a 3 just to make clear that this problem exists and we have to deal with them. Okay, so let's create this image, and then let's jump into the image database, the free image database, and try to search for some images that we can use on our project. Okay, you can use totally different images. I'm using one specific image, maybe 2, I don't know yet. I have something in mind, but nothing is absolutely clear for me right now. I just need one very impactful image. And I can start with the background because I think this is probably the easiest way to do that. And then jump to the hero image, to the main image of this poster. Okay, so let's go to the database. So here we are on Pexels, and I can start looking for backgrounds. And as you can see, he gives me a lot of options. Of course, this is not exactly what I want. So this might be a good idea because as you remember, the client wants something colorful, right? But that's the thing. Using the techniques that I'm going to use, we can do pretty much what we want. We can start from ground. We can use a texture, for example. I like this texture here. But I don't know yet about contrast. Okay, I think the colors are very, reddish, and there's a little bit of blue, so this is a little bit far from what the client wants, I imagine. I like this type of thing because there's a movement happening here. As you can see, it's not something vertical or something boring or something horizontal like this. There's something like 45-degree lines. I think this is super useful for us. We can try to use this thing as an advantage. And there is a lot of very interesting textures. So for example, this one, it's monochromatic, but we can paint over and we can combine our own colors, and we can change this thing the way we want using the techniques I already showed you. So for example, let's try, I kind of like this thing here. I don't know if this thing is going to work, so you just have to click and file free download, and you can have to choose like the biggest size. And as you can see, even the big size is not that big compared to the size of the things we are working on our composition. Okay, so you have to always think about what you want and what you need in order to use on a professional work. So in our case, I think this image is smaller, but they do not have like bigger images bigger than this. So this is the catch, actually. All of those images, they are absolutely free. You can use to do whatever you want, but the price to pay is they are big, but not that big. So this thing looks very, very large, but it's not. For professional use, this is not good enough. Okay, thinking a little bit better, I think I'm going to try to see if I can find something more colorful already. So I think this is kind of interesting. There's a lot of reds here, so we can try to work with that. So let's check the size. Oh, the size is not that good, but we can try to extrapolate the size of the things inside Photoshop. But still, I like the pattern that we had there on the other image. So let's go back to the other one. I kind of like that thing already. So yeah, let's download the biggest size, free download. You don't have to do anything. You just have to save the file and remember where you saved the file. And then I'm going to bring this file to Photoshop and start messing with this thing. Okay, back into Photoshop. I have my image here. I download it. I open up this image. Here I have my poster project, which by the way I already saved as a PSD file, just to guarantee that I'm not going to have any problems in the future with that, so to lose something, right? So we just have to go back to our image, click and drag with the left mouse button and release on top of this image. And by the way, I would like to show you something that I will start using from now on. All the keys that I'm pressing, they are appearing on the left corner of the screen. Okay, so you can have access to all of the keys. So for example, the right mouse button, if I double click something, if I use Control, Alt, space bar, and so on. Okay, so keep that in mind. I'll be using all of those keys to try to help you a little bit better. Okay, so in this case, I would like to transform this layer, and the fastest way to do that is going to Edit, Free Transform, or using the shortcut Control T. So that's the case, Control T or Command T. You will see the handles around your image. If you just hover over, you will see this small handle like with a banded arrow, you know. I would like to suggest you to always start using this option here. This is a way to lock width and height. And if you want to gain some precision during this thing, which by the way, Photoshop by standard tries to ignore the physical size of the layers. You can right mouse button here and you can choose pixels and you see this thing in pixels. You can do the same thing on both sides and you see that this image had 3040 pixels by 2200 whatever, and this might be helpful in some specific cases when you want more precision. Okay, so I would like to rotate this image, but to have some sort of precision it would be nice to snap this into certain degrees. Okay, you can also use the number here because this is the degree. If you want, you can click and drag here to kind of change the numbers, of course, but I think this is not very intuitive. So a way to do that on a very interesting way is to use Shift. If you do that, you're going to snap your image into increments. Okay, so let's start again. Control T. To rotate, hold Shift, and then you left click and drag, and then your image is going to be like that. If you resize, and since this option is activated, the image is going to be locked width and height, so you're not going to distort your texture. So this is what I want. I want some lines, some to kind of create some sort of small difference, you know. Now I would like to start working with colors, and to do that what I usually do is to create small squares. By the way, all of those things here, they are geometric forms, and we can create those things and we can draw things on our screen, and there is basically two ways to work with all of those tools. Okay, the first one is using shapes, then path, and then pixels. The shape is more interesting for us, but you can use path. Path is going to draw selections, like small selections, and pixels is going to literally draw pixels on your screen. Okay, shapes are better because you can resize the shapes, you can deform the shapes, and you can change the format and the appearance of the shapes using tools like path selection tools and tools like the pen to add points, remove points, convert path points, and so on. So those tools here, they're meant to be used together with paths. And you can draw paths using the geometric presets here, but in this case I just want to draw small rectangles to put the colors inside those guys and to show you how to work with that. Okay, you have the fill and you have the stroke. The stroke is the outside part of the box, let's suppose. Okay, if you draw this thing with Shift pressed, you're going to draw something like this, and as you can see we have the stroke, and the stroke is very thin right now, but we can work on the thickness of the stroke and we can have the stroke. If you don't want stroke at all, which by the way is our case, you just have to click here and click on the first option, and if you do that you don't have stroke anymore, just have the fill. And in the fill you can click on the basic colors here, you can change the system to click here and select like freely, or if you want you can use the presets inside those things here. So this is some preset colors for CMYK, grayscale colors, pastel colors, and so on. Okay, so you have a lot of different ways to work with colors inside Photoshop. We are going to talk about this eventually, but you just have to know that this is what I want. Okay, and as you can see we have something weird here because we have like a huge space and we have a small square. I would like to see this thing a little bit better, so I would like to go here to the panel and go to the panel options. Okay, again, if you click on this small option here and go to the panel options, you will have access to this thing here. I would like to select something bigger, so a thumbnail size like this or this would be nice. And layer bounds. If we select layer bounds, instead of showing the whole image and the square very small in the middle of the image and a lot of transparency around, you will see that Photoshop is going to focus on the geometric shape and show me that, oh, okay, I have this guy, but he's going to ignore the surroundings, the entire image. If you want, you can go back and you can change this, okay? So don't worry about that. And try to remember the auto select right now is activated. So if I click on the background, Photoshop is going to jump to the background. If I click on the shape, Photoshop is going to select the shape. I'm just drawing this guy because I would like to change the color here. To change the color, you have to double click on your shape and you're going to open up this image, and here you can type the colors you want. So I'm going to do the same thing with 4 boxes because I would like to have 4 colors to start, but I think this box is too big. And by the way, Ctrl T allows me to resize all objects, all layers inside Photoshop. Okay, so I have this color first and I need 4 more copies. I have 2 options to do that. I can hold Alt, click and drag here. As you can see, when I hold Alt, Photoshop changes my cursor a little bit. That means that I'm going to click and drag and make a copy of whatever is under my cursor. So in this case, I would like to click and drag on this thing. And if I hold Shift when I drag, you will see that I can keep the line straight, okay? Be careful with that because holding Shift and Alt can change the layout of your keyboard. So in this case, I'm using the English United Kingdom because my actual keyboard is from United Kingdom, okay? This is the only thing about that. But if you just have one keyboard layout, Windows is not going to bother you with that, okay? So don't worry about that. You can also click and drag with Alt here. If you click and drag, you're going to create a copy, but this copy is going to be on top of the previous copy. So in this case, you have to click and drag to make this thing bigger. We are not looking for precision, by the way. This is just a way to create 4 copies of this thing. Alt and click. Oh, another way to do that. Let me delete this thing. Another way to do that is click and drag with your layer to this plus thing here. This is, by the way, is the create new layer shortcut. You just have to click and drag on top of this thing, not on top of the bucket, okay? Be aware of that. On top of this thing here, and I'm going to create a copy, and the copy is obvious on top of the previous copy, and now I have 4 copies. I'm doing that because I have 4 colors. I would like to select the colors faster, and a way to do that is to double click on the small square here and go here and paste the colors that the client gave me, okay? So I'm going to do that and I'm going to show you how to do that. You just have to, again, Ctrl C, Ctrl V, okay? This is a hexadecimal number. If the client gives you the RGB codes, you just have to type the RGB here. If the client gives you the CMYK color, you just have to type the values for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black here, and you will have the perfect color. Okay, so in this case, the client gave me a hexadecimal value, and I just have to paste here, click OK, and then go to the next one, double click, paste, and so on, and I will have the 4 colors here. Again, I'm just using this thing to access the color faster. Okay, let's do that right now. Now I have the colors that the client chose inside every single square here. As I said, this is just a way to access those colors on a easy way, okay? And I'm doing that, by the way, to have, like, again, more speed on my design, okay? To paint and to change a little bit this background and the colors of this background, I would like to literally use those colors to paint over this image, okay? To do that, and just to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to close the color panel, just double click on the name. I'm going to close the properties, and I'm going to work with a group here to put all those colors inside this group. Groups, by the way, are meant to be used with this guy here, okay? You can group layers as a way to keep things together. You can create masks on entire groups, and it's a very powerful way to edit image as well. And I tend to use very, very often. So in this case, I'm going to drag all of those guys to this group here. And then when I create a group, there's a group here, and all the things are inside. It's like folders on Windows Explorer, okay? So I can call this thing colors, and then hit enter, and you can rename this thing, okay? So in this case, I'm going to jump to this layer here, not inside the group, okay? I am outside the group. As you can see, there's a small hierarchy here. There's a small offset on the layers, because those layers here, they are of course inside the group, right? So I can jump to this layer, which by the way, we should rename as back. We can get rid of this background here because we're not going to use this guy at all. I just have to delete. And then I'm going to create a empty layer. You can go here and create an empty layer, or if you go to layer, new layer, Photoshop is going to create an entire new layer for you. But if you go to the menu, new layer, Photoshop is going to ask you the name of this layer, and if you don't want to put a name right now, you don't have to, okay? Just have to click OK, and Photoshop is going to create this guy. By the way, if you try to use this button here, Photoshop is going to create the layer and is not going to ask you anything. So it's probably a faster way to do that, okay? So in this case, I would like to use my brush tool, and with the settings, which by the way, when you are using the brush tool, if you right mouse button, you can access the settings, but if you go here to the top, you have the same settings, okay? So first of all, I would like to put like a hardness in 0, because I want a very soft brush, and I want a bigger brush. You just have to remember that bigger numbers here, so the biggest is 5,000, is going to give me something huge like this, okay? I don't want something like that. I want something smaller, but not that small. So 400 is not enough. Okay, this is probably a good idea, okay? I like this. And I just have to paint. And to paint, we have to capture the colors of those guys here, okay? The way to capture the color of something inside Photoshop, it's using a tool called eyedropper tool, okay? With this eyedropper tool, there's a bunch of other tools here, very, very cool tools, but this eyedropper tool is a way to allows me to click on a image and automatically take this color of that specific point and transfer to the foreground color, which is exactly what I want. So if you click here, Photoshop is going to transfer the color to this guy here. If you click here, Photoshop capture the color. If you click and drag, Photoshop is going to try to capture the color on the fly. And when you release the mouse, Photoshop is going to stop. Oh, okay, this is the color. Boom. Yeah, that's the color. Okay, so this is a very powerful way to capture the color of anything. Okay, so in this case, I would like to start with the warm colors. Okay, and with the cold colors, I'm going to use the cold colors in the middle and the warm colors outside. So we can go like from bottom to top. You can choose to do whatever you want. Okay, so there's not a fixed order here. I just want to paint some lines. Okay, on this moment it's going to look like crazy, but it's not. Okay, a very fast way to activate this eyedropper tool is, if you want, you can hold Alt and click. If you do that, you're going to activate the eyedropper tool without having to even go there. Okay, so if you click Alt, click and drag, you see it's exactly the same thing. And by the way, there is a gray circle that is this half circle changing color, and the bottom circle means the previous color. Okay, the top half of the circle means the new color. So this will be the new, the blue was the previous color. If I release, now this is the previous color and the top part will be the new color. Okay, so just so you know, I'm going to use blue and click and drag. You can do something like this, okay, and then alt click and then paint another part like this. Right now this is not going to make a lot of sense, but I promise that it's going to make sense when I start really doing things with those colors, okay? So, and I can try to finish with a little bit of blue on top as well. Okay, so I try to create a rainbow. And by the way, if you want to paint things on a straight line, just out of curiosity, okay, I'm going to create a new empty layer just to show you a very cool resource here that we have when we are painting things inside Photoshop. So for example, I turned my brush into a smaller size. I'm going to capture red, and if you try to do a very straight line, you'll see that this is very hard. Okay, so you have two options. If you're using a tablet, you will probably like this idea here called smoothing. So smoothing is a way to kind of help you to put your cursor in front of your result, and you have the possibility to kind of correct your drawing or your line as you do. Okay, so this is a option. This is kind of a new option inside Photoshop. In the past they didn't have this thing. If you don't want to use, it's totally fine. I'm going back to the 10%, but if you really want to do like straight lines, you just have to click, hold shift, click again, and you will see that you are doing literally straight lines. Okay, so we use this thing to pretty much most of the tools inside Photoshop. Everything that you have to paint allows you to do this kind of thing inside Photoshop. Okay, so that was just a quick note. I'm going to delete this layer. I'm going back to my rainbow layer, and now I would like to introduce you to the concept of effect. By the way, I don't need the colors right now. I can hide the colors here. Let me see, I think there's a small gap here. I would like to cover a little bit better this gap. Let's go back to the colors, let's go back to the brush, let's increase the size a little bit, something like, yeah, something like this. I'm going to click here and I'm going to try to paint on that gap, and I'm going to do the blue thing here just to make sure that I'm not seeing anything on the back. Okay, so now I think everything is fine. Let's try to use some sort of effect here. We have a lot of effects. Okay, I would like to introduce you to filters. Filters are super cool. There's a bunch of them, and you can combine this thing to create very interesting things. So what I would like to do is to create some sort of you know, disturbance on this thing here, and I think the best way to do that is using Liquify. Liquify is something really cool inside Photoshop. We can do a lot of things with Liquify, and as you can see, when you click on Liquify, Liquify is going to open up a new window, a completely new window. We can resize this window a little bit just to show you the context, and there is a lot of options, of course, and there is a lot of modes as well. Okay, I would like to use this Parker tool, okay, because actually no, the true clockwise tool is probably better. Okay, I'm using a size, a huge size. Okay, here you don't have the option of using right click to try to resize. You have to go here and resize the size of your action manually, but I think 2000, something between something close to 2000 is a good idea. Okay, so the density, the pressure, the height, the rate, sorry, you just have to click and hold. If you click and hold, Photoshop is going to do that for you. And by the way, if you hold Alt while you click, Photoshop do this thing on the opposite direction. Okay, try not to get close to the borders. I just want to do a little bit more here, something like this, and I think we are good to go. Okay, So just a way to kind of ripple this thing a little bit better. And if you want, you can go back to the forward wrap too, and you can increase a little bit the size here, and you can try to move those pixels back to the border. Okay, the way to use this tool is basically click and drag. You are going to manipulate a bunch of pixels at once. Okay, by the way, Alt and scroll wheel up, wheel down, can help you to navigate inside this window the same way we use inside a normal window in Photoshop. If you click OK, by the way, this is not real time. This is going to work after you click OK. And then when you go back to Photoshop, Photoshop is going to apply this effect on your background. Okay, so this is one of them. Another one I would like to show you is, let me see, if we go to filter, we might use, let me see, pixelate, color, halftone. Halftone is super cool because it's a very famous effect. So we have the size of the pixels. We can make it bigger, we can make it smaller. I think this size is pretty okay. Let's do a bigger size. Okay. Again, this doesn't make any sense right now, but it will make sense when you see the results. Okay. Let's do this color halftone with the default settings. Okay. By the way, if you want to reset the settings to the standard, you just have to hold Alt on your keyboard and click on reset, and Photoshop is going to reset the settings of those windows. Okay, Alt is a secret key inside Photoshop to do this kind of thing. Okay, I'm going to use 10, and the rest of the settings are pretty much the same. You just have to click OK, and Photoshop is going to apply this thing. Okay, if you double click on the zoom tool and go very close to your image, you are going to notice what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to create this dot pattern. Okay, and the 10 size I gave is exactly the size of this small ball here on every single color. Okay, so, and I did that because I need some sort of texture when I do the next thing I would like to do, which is filter, blur. Let me see. We can use motion blur. Okay, because motion blur inside Photoshop does exactly that. So he takes the pixel. If you, by the way, click here, you can kind of hold the effect. If you release your mouse, Photoshop's going to apply the thing. Okay, so first of all, the distance. I want a huge distance. Okay, something really, really huge. You can go up everything and you will see kind of the results I was expecting to create. And you can also work with the angle. Okay, because if you remember, we have an image in the background that this image have angle, right? So I would like to put like 45 here and click OK. And then I can take this image and I can try to mix with the background. Okay, the way I do that, I can use a lot of resources. I can go to the opacity, for example, and I can try to reduce the opacity, but I think this effect is not that good. You can also try to transfer the colors from the top layer to the bottom layers using the modes here. So we have a lot of modes and you can test a lot of different things. I think this is very dark, very dark. Oh, this is kind of interesting. I don't know. You can go down, down, down. Let me see. Those final options here, they kind of transfer the hue, the saturation, and the color itself to the background. Okay, so you can try to mix and match the colors with the image in the background. Again, this is non-destructible. Your image is preserved. Your top layer is just calculating the colors and trying to transfer to the bottom layer. And that's the thing. I would like to take this and literally apply to this image because I would like to do this whole process again to have more texture, more color, more transformations. And how to do that? We just have to flatten those layers. What I mean by that is exactly that. I need to go to layer, and that is a option here called merge visible, that is merge layers, and that is flatten image. If we use flatten image, Photoshop is going to take all the layers and it's going to create a background out of all of the things. So let's do that just to show you the final result. Are you sure that you want to discard hidden layers? So hidden layers are going to be ignored. Yes, I want. So Photoshop will create a background from all of the things. I don't want that. Okay, let's undo. So Control Z. I just have to select those two here, go to layer, and then merge layers, not merge visible. Okay, merge, in this case, merge visible and merge layers are going to work pretty much the same, because we have this hidden colors here. As you can see, it's hidden, right? I just have to select both, go to layer, and then merge visible. Sorry, it's not merge visible, is which is exactly the same, merge layers. Okay, I'm going to do the same process. In this case, I'm going to filter, and I'm going to pixelate, color halftone. I'm going to use pretty much the same results, but in this case, I would like to make it bigger. So let's try 20 here, and then click OK to have like a huge pattern. And then let's try filter, blur, motion blur, pretty much with the same results. And as you can see, we have something very dynamic. This is what I wanted. Okay, so and one may say, oh, you destroyed the image, you destroyed the thing. Yes, I destroyed because I wanted the lights, I wanted the colors, I wanted the patterns, I want the movement. So that's what I wanted. So in this case, this is the background. Okay, and we can work with that. And now the next thing I would like to work is the image itself. Okay, but before we move on, I would like to talk about something extremely important, which is guides. Okay, every time we work with anything, we have to create some guides, we have to create some limits, we have to work with margins. If we do not work with margins or guides or anything, it's going to be really complicated to keep doing our work. So that's why working with that is so important. Okay, so I would like to show you something important here on view. We have this option called new guide layout, and guides and lock guides and whatever. We have a lot of things related with guides, and this is what we want. But to work with guides and to be able to create guides, you can come here and say, okay, new guides, I want a horizontal, I want a vertical. You can say the position. Okay, this might be a good idea, but at the same time not that good. I'm explaining why, because this is not interactive. Okay, the way to create guides on a interactive way is to always use rulers. Okay, and to do that we need to activate the rulers, which, by the way, you do that using Control R. Okay, I'm not sure if the rulers are, let me see, I'm not sure if the rulers, where exactly the rulers are. I'll try to remember that. But since I always use the shortcut Control R, we kind of see the rulers and we can hide the rulers. Okay, so the rulers, they start counting the point 0 on the left corner of your image. If I go up a little bit, if I go close of this guy a little bit, you see, okay, this is 0, okay, and this is 0. When I create a new guide, like using this option here, new guide, he's going to suggest, okay, 0 pixels is this point here. Okay, I'm not sure if this is a good idea. So another way to create guides on a faster way is to literally click and drag on your rulers and release where you want to create the guides. Boom, and I created the horizontal one and a vertical one and another horizontal one, and on the bottom another vertical, horizontal, of course. But they're not exactly very well aligned, I would say. So there's a lot of ways to work with this. So one of the ways is, if you know the size of your background, by the way, if you want to know the size of your image, you just have to go to image, image size, or canvas size. Okay, canvas size is the size of the background, and this is the thing in pixels. Of course, it's in pixels because I changed it to pixels when I started working. But if you want to work on millimeters, for example, you can. Okay, he tries to round just a little bit, but in this case, I would like to work with pixels because we have more precision, right? I have to create something to kind of, you know, define those margins here. And if this thing have like 3000 whatever, I can do something smart here. I can go and draw a smart square. If I hold shift while I'm dragging, I can create something very precise, like 200 or 250, 250 pixels. If you want to work on a very precise way, you just have to select your rectangle. You can go here and you can literally change the numbers. So 250, and I can take the stroke because I don't need the stroke, and I can put whatever color I want. I don't care. And now I have this small square. Okay, now I just need to align things to this guy, and to do that I just have to click and drag, align here, click and drag, align here, and I have to do the same thing on the other side. On this side here, I just have to click and drag here and put this guy here on the corner. Okay, and now I have to align this guy here, and now I have a perfect guides for my work. By the way, I don't need those guys anymore. You can hide or you can delete if you want. So I'm going to delete, and just to make sure that everything is fine, I can also lock the guides. Okay. By the way, you can create guides from shapes. I already have a shape. So for example, I can go here and I can draw a line, right? A very straight line. I'm holding shift while I draw because I want to know, for example, the middle of my composition. Be careful with that. Let me undo. That happened because the auto select was selected. I'm going to take this line and I'm going to align this line perfectly in the middle. So to do that, as I said, you can use the alignment tools. You just have to Control A to select all the pixels on your background, and you can use this option here and this option here, and you will align this guy perfectly in the middle. Okay, if you want, you can duplicate this thing to create a horizontal line. You just have to go to your line, click and drag here to the plus, Control T, click and drag with Shift pressed, and now you have a horizontal line. Now I know exactly the center of my poster. That doesn't mean that I'm going to use the center, but in design we try to find some sort of balance between top and bottom, between the information left and right, and so on. So we try to keep this thing very well balanced during the creation of the things we need to create. Okay, so if you want to create guides from the shapes, you just have to go to View New Guide from Shape, and you will create this guide here, and again View New Guide from Shape, and now I have all the guides I need, and they are locked. If I select this option here, now I cannot move the guides anymore, but I can align things to the guides if I want. So for example, if I draw this guy here and I go close to the guides, as you can see, he is snapping to my guides. So working with guides is something extremely extremely important, okay? By the way, if you want to delete a guide, so let's suppose that I don't like those guides here because they're kind of useless, they're outside of my image, right? Let me delete this shape here, this shape here, this shape here. By the way, deleting the shape that generated the guide. Do not delete the guide, okay? If you want to delete the guide, you just have to make sure that in that case I created a shape. This shape had some pixels width, right? And Photoshop created this gap between the things. This is not exactly that precise, so this line that I drew just clicking and dragging from my ruler is just one line, but this guy here, this double line, is because when I draw the line using the line tool have a shape, and this shape have a width, okay? And Photoshop was trying to respect the width. So next time try to use on your shape like 1 pixel. But still Photoshop will draw like 2 lines, okay? This is one of the limitations of creating guides. But anyway, the guides, they are absolutely centralized. I'm just using them as references. And as I said, if you want to delete guides, you can do the following. Unlock first. You can right click on the guide, and sometimes you have in this case you don't have the option to delete, okay? And inside Illustrator you have to there's this option, but in this case you don't have. The only thing you have to do is click and drag and throw on top of your ruler, and this guide is going to be deleted, okay, if that's the case. So you just have to do that with all the horizontal and all the vertical guides that you do not desire to use anymore, okay? So if you think that these double things here are bad, you can also click and drag to remove, click and drag to remove, and we are going to have just simple lines. They're not exactly centralized perfectly in the middle, but they're pretty close, okay? I think this is more than enough for a design like this. And remember to lock your guides to avoid moving them afterwards. Here we are once again in Pexels. I would like to search some images, ballet images. So in this case, I would like to try ballet. I could try something like modern dance or whatever, or jazz maybe, but in this case I think this is more than enough to start. So I like very much this type of image because this is very modern. This is not necessarily ballet. Of course it has a lot of things to do. So for example, the position of the feet, the strong pose of the body. As I said, bodies flying around in space. This can convey the idea. And I think we don't want something that remembers classic ballet, because this is a modern thing. This is not exactly a classic thing. So this could be interesting, but at the same time, the face of the woman is not exactly good. And we don't, oh, this might be a good idea, but I think the hands, let me see. Oh, we can see the hands. They are quite okay, and we don't even need the color. I don't like the gloves, but at the same time I kind of like the posture. I like the type of photo. As you can see, since we have a very distinct difference between the foreground and the background, the background is blurred, you know, this might be a easy type of selection. But at the same time we have brown on the woods of the ceiling, and we have brown on the hair. So this might be a little bit challenging. It's totally possible to do, but since this requires a little bit of technique, I would like to avoid this kind of thing, at least for now. If we have more time, I would show you different ways to select hair, select fine details, so we can combine a multitude of selections to be able to do this kind of thing. But in this case, I'm looking for something modern. I really hope that I'll be able to find something more, something like this. I like this kind of thing. oh, this is awesome. I like this and I like this. So we have two options, okay? With this case here, we might have some problems of framing this picture on our composition because the legs are already out of the composition. Here we have something more horizontal, but we have a lot of lines and the pose is very strong. I like this thing, really like this thing. I'm thinking about this one. The selection itself is also simple because, you know, there is a strong difference between the colors on the foreground and the background. So this might be a easy selection for us. So let's stick with this. So I'm going to download the original picture and I'm going to jump back to Photoshop and try to explore this image on our composition. Back to Photoshop, we have our image and of course our main composition here with our guides, our backgrounds. I might change the background and try to complement this thing a little bit, but don't worry about that right now. Let's go back to the photo. The first thing I would like to do is to separate, of course, the subject from the background. And to do that, I'm going to double click on my photo. Doesn't matter the name right now. And I would like to extract the two dancers from the photo. So I'm going to select and use subject. Photoshop is going to try his best to select the content, but as you can see here, it's not perfect. Okay, we might need to adjust those parts a little bit. You can do this now, you can do this later. Let's do this later because I can show you how to fix this kind of thing. Okay, so in this case, I just have to create a mask, and to do that, I'm going to click on this small icon here, Add Layer Mask, and then I have a mask. If you hold Alt and click on your image, you can see the quality of your mask. Once again, it's not perfect. As you can see, there's some small issues here. If you hold Shift and click on your mask, you can disable your mask temporarily. So as you can see, the mask done with the select subject, it's quite good, works pretty well in some parts. So for example, at the hair, but there's no way of using this type of selection on a complex image like this, which is a little bit complex, without doing any type of adjustments. And to do this type of adjustments, if you go to your properties panel, you have access to the selection mask. If you go here to the select menu, you see the select mask, and if you click on any of the buttons, you will go inside the selection. Okay, so this is the transparency menu, so you can see exactly what you are doing. So sometimes I work with a very low value here, like 10%, just to see the back. If you want to see your mask, you can click here and click back black and white to see the quality of the mask. I prefer to use onion skin. Okay, so let's go close to the hands and try to fix this problem here. So to do that, I'm going to use this second option here, which is the refine edge brush. You can work on the size. If you right click on your screen, you can define a smaller size for your brush, and you can try to click here to kind of try to fix this mask a little bit. Okay, so you have to be patient because again, there's no miracle, there's no one-click solution. Photoshop tries to do a very decent work, and at the end it's a very good one, but it's just a starting point. So I'm trying to refine this mask as best as I can. Of course, I don't need this level of detail because I'm thinking about using a black and white color to kind of vanish a little bit the details of the photo, because I don't want the photo itself, the content of the photo to appear that much. So for example, I don't like the socks. I would prefer a photo with, you know, the barefoots, But in this case, since I didn't search too much, it was not possible to find something better to suit my original idea. But anyway, I think this is good enough just to show the process, because my concern here is to literally show the process, show how to fix masks, how to create complex masks, and this kind of thing. So I'm not worried too much about the final result, to be honest. I am more concerned with the quality. So as you can see here, if I try to use the same tool here on near the clothes of the man, the result is like this. So I suggest you to undo, so Control Z to go back, and to fix this type of thing we can do manual selections and a combination of other approaches that I already showed you. You can also, if you want, you can paint on your mask. So for example, if you use overlay, you can go to the opacity and you can work like trying to show your original image or your original selection, you know. If you do that and go to the transparency, you can do that. Let me see. If you hold, if you click here, you can show the original photo, show edges, show original. Let me see. On layers. Yeah, sometimes trying to visualize different things can give you a better reading of exactly what you are doing. Okay. Another way to deal with this masking is to try to do manual adjustments. So for example, if you want to work on the hair, it's pretty good to use this type of tool. It does a kind of a good job, but at the same time, our photo doesn't have a lot of quality. So that's the problem I'm facing here. Since the photo itself is horrible when it comes to quality, the quality of my selection will never be good enough. But for the purpose that I am thinking here, this is more than enough. Okay, we can try to adjust a little bit to try to remove these black things around the hair. But as you can see at the end, we can use some tricks to don't have to deal with that, you know. Just try to focus on the worst part. Like if there's a lot of black, for example, you can try to remove, you can try to refine, but be careful because the original photo was on a dark background. So if you try to use this tool here close to you know, this type of section, this tool is going to be very confused, and at the end is going to be a little bit complicated to deal with the separation of the areas. So let's click OK. Again, if you want, you can do a bunch of things here. Since this is kind of easy area, you can, for example, you can combine the pen tool and you can draw your mask portion by portion, and you have a bunch of paths, and you can use the paths, the selection on the paths, to refine your mask. You know, you go inside your mask and do that. So let me just demonstrate this workflow on this part of the clothes. Again, this is not the focus here. I just want you to understand that we have options. So for example, I'm going to start here and I go around. If I do like bigger strokes here, I can select bigger areas. Okay. Something like this. I'm using Alt to move my entire image to see a little bit better. And on those small parts here, we can go close, and then go around. Again, you can fast forward this part of the video, of course, if you think this is too boring, but I'm just trying to demonstrate different ways to fix this. Okay, so go around. close the shape, and this is going to be one of the parts that you can use to refine the mask. Okay, by the way, the mask here is, as you can see, the mask, the black and white mask, is totally different than your path. So you can use this path to kind of refine this mask. So how to do that? Go to the paths, hold Control, click on the miniature here, and you will select this part. The only thing you have to do is to fill this part of the mask, select the mask of course, is to fill this part of the mask with white, which in this case is your foreground color. You just have to hold Shift Backspace and you will open up this option here. By the way, if you go to Edit, Fill, okay, is exactly the same window. It's just a shortcut for this thing. And you have a few options here. One of them is foreground color. I can paint this part here with foreground color, which by the way is white. If I click OK, you will see that now, let me delete the selection, the mask is perfect. If we go back to the image, you see that we have a better quality on our mask, and I don't even need the shape anymore. Okay, so you can keep doing that to improve the quality of the mask. So for example, on those parts here, if you go back to the mask and hit Shift and click, you see that we can do a better job, way better than Photoshop did when he tried to understand what is this black and this black. So sometimes the tool is not 100% efficient. And when you have close, when you have like not a lot of difference between the foreground and the background, the two just have no idea how to deal with that, okay? But keep in mind that on those parts here, when you have a lot of contrast and when you have fine details like hair, the Select and Mask tool is the way to go, okay? Because you can have like beautiful selections as I did here. Even if the photo sucks, at the end you can have like a better result to refine parts of the image. Okay, so you can combine both approaches if you want. I do not recommend that, but if you want, you can literally go to your brush tool, try to use a smaller size, try to use a hard one, maybe something above 90%, and you can literally go here and paint. So for example, on those smaller parts, by the way, if you hit brackets on your keyboard, you can make it bigger or smaller. This is really hard to do when you have like a laptop, but if you have a full keyboard like I am using right now, you can make the brush bigger or smaller, and this can be very handy. Okay, so in this case, if you go to your mask, you can literally go here, change the color of the background. If you hit X, you can change this, and you can paint. Okay, so in this case, of course, I did something wrong. Let me undo, Control Z. And then I can hit X because I have to paint white, right? And you can literally go here and paint. But since you're not seeing your image, this can be a little bit challenging because you have this problem here. But anyway, you can paint a little bit more outside. You can change the color to black, and you can go back and paint, okay? So this is one of the things you can do just using regular painting tools. To be very honest, I prefer to use paths, because using paths I have more control, and I think it's way faster than just painting my masks. But if you paint, as you can see, it works pretty well, okay? And then you can go back to the select and mask, and you can try to refine the mask and so on, okay? I'm just giving you some options on how to do that. One thing I would like to talk about now is a concept in Photoshop called Smart Object. Smart Object is a very interesting way to work with content inside Photoshop, because if you create a smart object, you can protect this content. You kind of encapsulate this content inside a container, and you can do a lot of things with this object. And later on, if you need the original version of the object, it's going to be there, protected. So this is a very, very interesting way to work inside Photoshop, and we are going to use smart objects a lot of times, and more specifically when we bring things from Illustrator inside Photoshop. And another very important and interesting way to work is to protect certain objects. So we can come back to these objects later and we can refine, we can do a lot of things, but if we work with smart objects, we are going to protect the objects. And this is the most important concept that you need to understand about smart objects right now. So to create smart object, and I'm going to do that with this layer, you just have to right mouse button on the name of the layer. And there is a lot of options here. One of them is convert to a smart object. And now you will see that after we convert this object into a smart object, we have like a different type of layer, and this layer here becomes something more and something different. Okay, how to use this thing? You can apply any effect. You can use a lot of things that we can use like on any regular layer. But the most interesting thing is your layer is going to be protected because all the contents of this layer are inside this container. So to open up this container, you just have to double click on the icon, and Photoshop is going to ask, okay, are you sure that you want to edit the contents? And you say, okay, yes, I want. So Photoshop is going to open up this content on a PSB file with all the things inside this layer protected, including our mask. As you can see, we have literally the original photo. We didn't delete any pixels of our photo, by the way. It's totally preserved. Okay, so the most important thing is if we do anything inside this container. So for example, I am creating a new layer here. I'm going to take like a brush, probably a bigger brush, just to demonstrate this concept, and I'm going to paint here. And now we have something more inside this layer. If I close this container, saving the container, Photoshop is going to bring this container with the new content inside our previous project. If you want to just go inside and delete this thing, you can. You just have to go there, open up the container, delete the layer, close, save once again, and you are going to return to your original project. Okay, so in this case, I would like to take this smart objects layer, main photo. Okay, this is the main photo. I'm going to click and drag and bring this guy to our composition. So this is what I want. I want to use this photo here. Okay, as you can see, it's a little bit smaller than I wanted. So you can hit Control T, by the way, edit, free transform, Control T, and you can resize this image to have something bigger, something like this. I still don't know exactly what to do with this image or the composition. I just like the balance, I just like the power, I just like the main concepts of the image itself. So, and the best thing is there's some motion, you know, and I would like to use this on my composition because lines are super important. You are going to learn about this when you study a little bit about composition and guides and yeah, some basic design rules on the design fundamentals. Okay, so I think this is good enough to start. We can click OK, and if you want, and that's the most interesting thing, my container is here. This is the original photo with my smart object. I can close this thing because I don't need this anymore. Don't worry, you're not going to lose anything because my container, my smart object is here. If you double click again, you are going to open up and you have access to your original photo, but anything we do, we are not going to affect the original photo anymore. Now that we have our photo, I would like to show you something very interesting. In the past, I talked about those effects here. If you go to image adjustments and if you use this type of effect straight on your image, these things here, they are usually destructible effects if you apply those effects straight on your pixels. But this is not the case anymore when it comes to smart layers or smart objects. When we try to apply any type of adjustment or any type of filter, Photoshop tries as best as he can to preserve the content of our layer. And this is one of the main advantages of using this workflow. So let me demonstrate that. I would like to apply image adjustments and use this black and white. We can also go to hue saturation and then just drop the saturation to have this type of effect. But if we do that, we don't have a lot of options to choose, how this effect is going to be applied on our image. And so in this case, I would like to use another approach. So in this case, I'm going to use image adjustments and black and white. Okay, if you go to black and white, we have a lot of options, and we also have some presets here. So for example, blue filter, I don't like. To black, darker, interesting, I like. But we have also other options. What this thing is doing is actually take the colors of the channels and try to mix the colors of the channels, do some sort of calculation to generate different results. Okay, so we have a lot of possibilities and we can have a lot of different types of effects. So for example, high contrast red filter. This is really beautiful and can give us a beautiful contrast of blacks and light grays, and I kind of like that. But right now I'm probably going with the green filter because it gives me a more consistent result. If you want, you can go to tint and you can work with the hue to kind of color your image or to give some color to your image. So this is one of the coolest approaches of using this black and white filter. If you want, you can go crazy with this thing, but I do not recommend you. Okay, so in this case, I want a pure black and white because I want the contrast between the subject and the background. Okay, so in this case, I can click OK, and you will see that the effect is not applied straight to the pixels. It's applied to the smart object, and this thing is called smart filter. So you have the black and white here. You can turn on and off. You can double click to edit the settings, and you can even change the settings if you want. Or if you are worried about, oh my god, what's happened with my image, you can double click on your image and you will see that your original image is absolutely intact. So this is probably one of the main advantages of using this workflow, and I would like you to try to use this as much as you can. Okay. Now that we have our photo, now that we have our basic structure, I would like to talk a little bit about layer styles. Okay, you have layer styles here on layer styles. Okay. We also have here on the corner, if you go to any layer, you have to select a layer first. You have the layer styles here. Okay, so these options, they're super cool and we can create a lot of effect with them. I would like to draw something on my screen and I would like to edit this thing and I would like to apply some effect. Okay, I would like to create some sort of neon effect, and to do that I can draw shapes like with my pen tool, for example. I'm drawing shapes, not paths. Okay, doesn't matter the stroke because I can go back here and I can fix this thing later. But if you want to adjust the stroke right away, you can do so. You just have to click, 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 and click. I'm not sure if I want a square or if I want any other geometric form, but you can go here just in case that you put too much points. You can go to this tool here, delete anchor point, and you can literally reduce the amount of information you have on this guy. Okay, so again, since this thing is a shape, as you can see here, I can go back here and I can change the value. So for example, 35, hit enter, and my shape is going to adapt to this value. Okay, if I want a fill, which by the way I don't want, you can choose here. If you don't want, you just have to click here and you are not going to have any fill. Okay, I want to do something a little bit bigger, like 40 pixels. It depends on the type of image, the size of your document. Those values, they are going to change every single time. Okay, this is not a fixed value, but you try to remember that the size of my document is kind of huge. Okay, another way to do that, if you want, so let me hide this guy here, select the layer underneath. I don't want to change the shape, I don't want to affect in any possible way. I can go here and I can draw like a triangle, for example. I just have to click and drag to draw. And if I do that, I will have the same settings here that I can change afterwards. And I can use this tool here called Direct Selection Path. By the way, we have two tools. The first one, Path Selection, is going to select all the paths. And I can move, I can transform, I can rotate, I can do a lot of things. Okay, but the second one is to do like straight modifications on the paths. And Photoshop is going to say, okay, if you do that, you are going to turn this thing into a live shape, and transform this thing into a regular path. Are you sure? Yes, I want. So now I have like a regular path and I can do that, I can do that, I can change here and whatever. So I will have like this result. Okay, so this might be one of the ways to do that. Okay, so keep in mind that you have choices and you can choose any of the choices you want. Okay, I would like to work with this geometric form to create something like new, as I said. I don't know which one I like the most. I think this is good. I also think this is good. I'm going to work with this one so I can delete the other one. Okay, now let's just change a little bit this corner here because I don't want the shape going way too far. But try to remember that this is a live thing, so I can go back here and I can change as much as I can. Okay, yeah, I think this is enough to start. I'm just going to use those points here to anchor my drawing. You don't have to do that. I'm just doing just by, you know, no purpose at all. Okay, now I have the shape. I would like to apply some effects. To do that, I can click here and select the effect I want, or if you want, you can go to layer, layer style, and select this style. I would like to start with color overlay. Oh, by the way, I don't have to use color overlay because again, if this thing is a shape, you just have to go back to the tool that you use. That doesn't matter which tool because all the tools, they give you access to the shape settings, right? You have to click here and select a color. I would like to work with a, I don't know, a purple, something like that. I could use blue as well because we will have like a better contrast with the background. We can choose whatever you want. So I want this one. I'm trying not to have that much of a difference between the subject and the background. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to use this one. And I don't have to go here and use color overlay in this case, but you can choose whatever you want. If you choose any effect, Photoshop is going to open up this window here, and here you can activate or deactivate. As you can see, every time we activate, it tries to show the effect real time. And some of the settings, basically you click here and you change the settings and you click OK. If you want to change once again, you just have to go back here and double click on the name of the effect, and Photoshop is going to open up this window and you can change the settings to do whatever you want. So in this case, I would like to start working with inner glow. Okay, just so you know, if you hit Control, this thing is going to appear, so you can go close. I want this tube effect. Okay, so that's why I'm using inner glow. You can tweak this thing to make it bigger, smaller, doesn't matter. Okay, if you want to choose a color kind of close to this one, be careful, because if you choose very close, you're going to kind of miss the main effect. Okay, so something brighter is better, because we have this blend mode here. If you change the blend mode, you are going to probably have to use another thing. So for example, multiply works better with darker colors, so you're going to be something, you know, see something darker around. So if you don't want this effect, try to use screen, for example, which is the standard one with a brighter color. The second thing I would like to do is to add a outer glow. Outer glow is going to do more or less this thing. By the way, if you want to reset the settings, you just have to hold Alt, click here, and you will see all the standard settings from the beginning. So let's try again, inner glow, the standard settings. Let's try outer glow. Outer glow is like this. I have here the size, you know, it's kind of big right now. Be careful with that. So if you want something like huge, you can increase the size. You can also work with spread and size. Okay, so try to think about that. In this case, I want like a bigger size, something like 150 pixels, and I think this is good enough. You can change the modes as well if you want to see other effects, something more subtle. You can, if you change the blend modes, you will see literally different results. So for example, soft light, hard light, linear light can give you like a strong effect. I like this linear light as well. I don't know about the size. Okay, and let's hit OK. If you want to see a stronger effect, you cannot use two glows on the same object. As you can see here, I have stroke, and by the way, the stroke is not activated. If you activate, he's going to cover the entire thing with a color. This is not what I want. So since I am not using this effect, you can delete just one effect. You can disable all the effects. You can click and drag on all the effects and drop on your garbage can. I don't want to do that. I'm hitting escape, okay? Or in this case, I did. Just Ctrl Z to go back. If you want, you can delete just one effect. You just have to click and drag on the name of the effect and drop on your garbage can, okay? So this is what I want for now. The next step is to use mask to hide parts of this object, because for example, I would like to see this part of the line going behind the dancer and this part of the line going behind this guy. Okay, to do that, we need to use masks. So the next thing I would like to do is to hide parts of contents, and to do that, we are going to use masks, but I would like to introduce you to another concept. Let's suppose that you have 2 or more layers. So in this case here, by the way, if you use Ctrl 0, you can fit everything on your screen, okay? Let's suppose that you have like 2 layers of effects. Like this is not a triangle, this is a neon 01, and this would be like neon 02, okay? Let's suppose that you have like 2 layers, okay? And in this case, I don't need both, I just need one of them. I'm just showing you one way to deal with that. So if you want to deal with multiple layers, and sometimes you have to hide multiple layers, the good thing to do is to probably select both layers and put those layers into a group, okay? And the way we usually do that is quite simple. So you can click here and you will create a new group. In this case, the group is empty, and you just have to click and drag and put your layers inside the group. Yeah, this is one way. Another way to do that is if you select both layers, you can click and drag and drop here on top of the folder, you know, and now you have a group and both layers are inside the group. As I said, I don't need both. I really don't care. I'm just showing you one example. So this is going to be neon. And now we have to hide this neon using the dancers, the body of the dancers, you know, because I want this thing going behind the dancer, this thing going behind the other dancer, and this other part going in front of the dancers. So to do that, I can create a mask from this layer, because if you double click here, you see, okay, I already have a mask, but I cannot use this guy here. Okay, I can Control C, Control V, but this is not going to work because the size of this image right now is completely different than this size of this image, okay? So the faster way to select all the content, all the pixels inside a layer is not using the select all. In this case, it's not going to work because select all tries to select the boundaries of the image, as I said. So in this case, I would like to just hold Control and left mouse button on the icon, okay, on the miniature of my layer. If I do that, I'm going to select all the pixels of that layer, ignoring the boundary, okay? So instead of applying this mask to this guy here, I'm going to apply this mask to the neon layer. Yes, I can apply masks to groups of layers, okay? And this is super useful because I can put things in the future inside this folder here, okay, inside this group. And since I already have a mask on top of my group like this, okay, everything that I put inside is going to work perfectly, okay? So now, as you can see, it's completely wrong, of course. So we have to kind of erase some parts. So for example, I need to invert, let's try to invert this thing, and you see, oh, now it's behind my object, okay? By the way to invert a mask is select the mask, Control I, then you are going to invert. If you select the mask and hit this button here, you will see the same result, okay? This is invert as well. And it appears because you selected the mask, of course. So how to deal with this problem here? I think on the top part, everything is fine, but on this bottom part is not right, okay? So what we should do is to go to the brush, select probably a very hard brush, okay? With a not that big size, I would say, and go back here. If the zoom is not working, you can double click on your zoom and use your mouse, go close to your image, and now you can start painting your mask with white, because again, white is going to show, right? This is exactly what we want. So select the mask, and if you paint your mask with white, you're going to see that now we can see the effect. We can see everything that is happening, okay? By the way, you don't have to use a hard brush. I'm just using to point that since I am deleting the parts I don't want, sorry, this is probably faster. So you can use whatever you want. You just have to understand what you're doing. So in this case, I'm just deleting parts of my mask and keeping other parts intact. Okay, so this thing should be in front as well, so we just have to delete here. Okay, if you want to do this faster, you can click here, hold shift, click here. If you do that, you're going to draw like literally straight lines, and I usually do that when I am in a hurry as a way to create this volume here. The problem is right now there is a disconnection, I would say, between what is going on top, you know, with my image, sorry, and with the neon thing. And it would be nice to have some sort of effect affecting the image, you know, if the color of the pixels, this purple thing, kind of, you know, bleed over the image to increase this effect. So we can try to think about doing that, and I'm going to show you how. Here we are, almost finishing. I would like to add a new layer to affect the entire image, and to do that I'm going to use a hue saturation layer, adjustment layer, but in this case, as you can see, the layer is on the wrong place because I was inside the group. Okay, so you can easily move this layer outside. So in this case, I would like to move to the top of my image. Okay, so I can close my group, and now if I go to the saturation, right to the bottom, you see that your image is not going to be affected because we didn't change the colors yet, and we have to literally fix this slider to the image to see something happen with our image. So in this case, I would like to change the color, of course, colorize, activate the colorize, and the saturation goes straight to the right. You don't have to put this much information, but it's good to have something. So in this case, I would like to have a good saturation here, like using something close to the color I was using. And I can also use something else here, a cool trick. So instead of affecting everything, I just want to affect the color areas. So you can double click on the name of the layer. Outside the name of the layer on a empty place, and you will open up layer style. Another way to do that is to go here and click on blending options. I really want to work with blending options, and to be more precise, I want to work with this part here, blend if. Okay, so we have two layers here, and we can change those sliders here, and as you can see, something is happening underneath. Okay, so in this case, I don't want to change both sliders. It's really hard to see, but we have two sliders here and two sliders here. What I would like to do is to take the inside slider with Alt and drag to kind of close the middle. And if you do that, you see that this slider cannot affect the shadows of the image, just the brighter pixels. Okay, if you want to see how this thing is affecting, by the way, we can change the blend mode to something like overlay, screen, or whatever. Okay, I just want a little bit of light. Let me see. Those options there are going to make everything darker. Those things are going to make everything lighter. And those things here, they kind of blend better the light, I would say, the color lights. Be careful with hard mix, okay? That could be a little bit dangerous. And since my image on the bottom doesn't have any color, because I took out of the color, some modes are not going to work at all. So in this case, I would like to use, let me see, vivid light, hard light. I think hard light or soft light, they can work. Let's click OK and see the before and after. Okay, if you want to delete a part of the effect from your image, or if you want something stronger, you can go back there, double click outside of the name, of course, and not click on the icons. Okay, you can go back here and you can use a different mode, like, let me see, like overlay, for example. Overlay is super strong, and click OK and select this mask. Is a white mask, so it's kind of affecting everything, and you can paint with black the parts you don't want to be affected. But right now my brush is super strong, so let's undo. Super hard, I would say, so we can increase the size a little bit, even more, maybe more, like, yes, something around 700, 800. And now you can kind of remove parts that you don't want to see the light affecting, you know, and you will have probably a stronger effect on the affected parts. So keep that in mind. It's a process of adding information and removing information. So for example, I can take out this part here and this part here, and just close to the neon itself, the effect is going to happen, you know. That gives a sense of depth and integration to this image. So think about that. You can decrease the size of the brush and try to delete some parts here as well. So this is, again, it's all about composition, right? And since this layer, I hold Alt and click here, since this layer is just affecting my image, it's not touching the background, okay? I think this is good enough for now. And I would like to work a little bit of typography and try to choose a font. I have a pretty good idea, and try to bring the other elements to my composition, okay? To create a little bit of depth, we can try to add some elements on the foreground. So a little bit of texture or fog, or we can even paint things. So if you find a texture that you want to use, you can also try to use a texture. There's no limits to what you can do. But since this video is already very long, I would like to stop here, jump to the typography. I'm going to show a little bit about you know, Google Fonts, where I'm going to choose a typography to use, and then I'm going back and finish this thing, bringing the logos as well. Here we are inside Google Fonts, and we can choose a lot of things based on some parameters. But I have a pretty good idea of, you know, what I want. So for example, I want something like this. It's a modern font with no serif, you know, something like this. I would like to avoid serifs as much as I can because of reading as well. So Source Sans is a good idea. I like this font very much. So let me open up on a new window just to show how I deal with fonts. I think more geometric font is also cool. It's super modern. So Railway is a good idea, but it will depend also if the font is bold or not. Something more compressed could be a good idea. So Open Sans is also super cool. I like. Work Sans is very, very good. Nunito. Those fonts, they have something in common. The fact that they are, you know, very modern fonts with no serif, you know, and they are very simple to read, to recognize. Titilium is also a good idea. So let me show you my process to find what I want. So in this case, I would like to have something like this, you know, and as you can see, we have black. And this is Source Sans. It's a very good one. I like this font. And if you like and select download family, you are going to have access to all of those fonts. Okay. If you want, you can select individual fonts to use if you don't want to install a lot of fonts. That's a choice as well. So this one is super cool. I also like because we have like bold, and we have the opposite, like super thin fonts. When it comes to ballet, you can imagine, you know, super thin people, super thin fonts kind of makes sense. So fashion, luxury brands, they try to use as much as they can very thin typography. So this have to do with the type of people and a personality as well. So there's a lot of things involved on this this choice of font, you know. So Titilium is super cool. It's a very modern one. I kind of like this one, and I would like to use, because we have like black and we have bold. They are a little bit different, but the black have a better reading, I would say. But at the same time, I'm not sure about these very smaller details. I think the black of railway is a little bit better for reading. But sometimes you also have to see if the fonts have weird numbers. So for example, 2 is smaller than 3. In this case here, railway. So if you use this font, you will have problems with the inconsistency of the heights of the numbers. For example, the 2 is smaller than the 3. It's a little bit weird. So let's see source. Source sans is way more consistent. So I think we have a winner. Okay, so I will choose source sans. You just have to download. If you download the entire family, Photoshop, Google Fonts is going to give you the zip file. You just have to uncompress this guy, and if you open up this file, you'll see a bunch of files, and you just have to install this thing on your operational system, and right away you will have access to all of those fonts on your layout. Okay, I'm going to install this thing, jump to Photoshop, and show you how I'm using this thing to work with texts. Back into Photoshop, this is the text I need to use, and I already installed my fonts, and now I can start working with that. My suggestion is every time you have like a lot of layers, like I already have here, if you want, you can select everything, Ctrl G to group everything, and this is going to be the design. You can put whatever name you want. If you want, you can block this layer just to avoid, selecting and doing anything, and you are not going to do anything with this layer. If you want, you can create another group, and inside this group you can separate your texts. Okay, so I'm going to start copying and pasting things, and just so you know, I'm using always horizontal type tool. You just have to click and then copy and pasting things. If the thing is very small, doesn't matter right now. I'm going to copy this thing using like different lines, because I will have more freedom to edit this text if I do that. So in this case, this first one is going to be like here, and I will bring the other ones, and then after I bring all the texts into different text layers, I can start doing the things I need to do. So I'm going to copy, cut this video, and then start doing the things I need to do after I copy and paste all the texts. Okay, now that I have all the texts, every single one into a different layer, you can work with the organizations of the layers the way you want. So for example, some people like to work top to bottom. Okay, in this case, it doesn't make any sense to organize things like that, because the order doesn't matter, because they're texts. They're not going to be overlapped in any possible way. Okay, so in this case, you can have this type of organization just to make your life a little bit better. So for example, this is the date, and this is the website, and this is the telephone number of the company, and we need, of course, we need the logos. I plan to bring the logos after this, but just so you know, you have to change all the typography, and to do that you have to double click and go here and change, and I would like to show you a faster way to do that. If you want, you can select all the layers. Since we are going to use the same typography, we don't have to do this one by one. Okay, this would be not very smart. So to do that, you can select all the layers, as I said, go to Window, and then Character. We have basically, when we work with text inside Photoshop, we have Character, and we have Paragraph, and also Paragraph styles. But paragraph and character, they are the most important things. So let's start with character. In this case, we are not going to use paragraph, because doesn't make any sense in our case, since our texts are already separated. So we are going to organize the texts on a manual way, I would say. But when we work with paragraphs, like more than one line, this window here is super important. And when you open up this window for the first time, if your panels are, you know, shrinked, you will see like a small icon here on this bar. If you click here, you see this entire panels opened like this one. I don't like because I will lose a little bit of space. And by the way, this is the history, this is the character, this is the paragraph, and you can bring other ones, other panels, and they're going to snap automatically on the places. Okay, you already have a bunch of them here, but this is not important. So we can close this thing and we can work with the character first. So since I already selected all the layers, I can go after my source sans pro. This is the typography. The size, I can put like a huge size. Of course, it's going to, you know, be kind of weird. All the texts are aligned to left. This is not a problem. And since we selected everything and we don't have auto select checked here, I can click and drag whatever I want to bring these things to the positions I want. So for example, the title of the show, the thing should come first. You know, people need to see this thing before seeing everything else. And I would like to put this and this to the top, I would say. Something like this, you know. And dancing lights, they do not have the same priority. And now we can start playing with the bold, I would say. So for example, dancing lights, we can put this like big, you know. Please don't go outside of your guides. Try to respect your guides. That's why we have guides in the first place, okay? So we have dancing lights, but I'm not sure if this is a good idea because it's covering the photos. Of course, we can rearrange the photo. The photo. You just have to select this layer here and go here and make everything goes down, you know, because the layers, they are together, those two here, and you can click here and you can bring everything down. That might be a good idea, so you free some space on the top to the dancing light title. So that is one possibility. You can also try to work with this dancing light. If you hit Ctrl T, you can transform this layer. If you hit Shift, you can drag this thing and put like this, you know, and you can make even bigger if you want. Please be careful with the distortion, of course. And I think this is cool. Okay, I'm pretty sure that black is not a good idea. Okay. If you want, you can put this information ballet show on other places, so you can create like two different designs. I would like to use the information ballet show on the top, like close to the dancing lights. That might be a good idea. Let me see, how can I do that? So ballet show, let's flip this over, hit OK. You can resize this thing a little bit, so work with a smaller size. If you want, you can try to work with a little bit of the height. If you want a small separation between the characters, you can go here and you can kind of select this small separation. Sometimes it's better to facilitate reading, you know, and that might be a good idea. So in this case, I have dancing lights and ballet show. If I select both layers, I can align both to the bottom like this. And I can bring all of those things here close to my guide. Do not go beyond the guides. Be careful with that. We can make this thing a little bit bigger. Again, try not to go outside. And this is a good starting point. And then we can take this information about the day and we can put here, because it's a very important information, right? It makes sense. So, so people know exactly what is going on. And in this case, I would like to resize my layer. By the way, if this thing is in front, you can turn this thing like this, and this is the time. And oh, by the way, I still have both layers selected, so be careful with that. I think the time is also kind of important, so you can try to use bold or other types of weights, but I think that the name of the spectacle is probably more important than the other information, right? So one way to gain some space here in the top is, if you want, you can put things just on this side. That might be one possibility, you know, like here. You can use the arrows to align objects as well. I use this all the time. A little bit up, a little bit right, and then this guy here goes here. Okay, so elements that goes on top, elements that goes down, under. Sometimes we can work with all of them together. Okay, other information. So for example, we have the phone and the website, and they can go here, I would say. Let's try to change both to bold, since we are using bold to most of the things, and we can try to reduce the size as well, just a notch, something like this. You can use this information close to the spectacle, you know. Sometimes this might be a good idea because people need to know a little bit about the artist. So the artist in this case is a company, it's a ballet company, so why not, right? So you can use this there, you can propose this kind of thing to the client. So all the time we have this option. I would not put the phone here. Sometimes this type of information is not readable when it's vertical. So the client might suggest you to use another position. So for example, since I moved my photos down a little bit, I would like to bring everything back to the top, something like this, because I kind of like the original position of my photos. And again, those elements going over other elements, this is not exactly a bad thing. Okay, so try to think about that. And by the way, we have the name. If you think about that, so everything is super black right now. This is not exactly a problem. Okay, we are going to work with that. So if you want, you can put this information here. Also on the top, I would put this a little bit smaller, you know, to not occupy a lot of space. If you want, you can align this thing to the right, just to not lose this alignment here, close to the guide, okay? And you can put this information here. Yeah, I think this is a good starting point. We are a little bit far from finishing, but still a good idea. If you want, you can position all those things together. So for example, the name, hold Control, do not click on the icon. Can you see it changes? Okay, do not click on the icon. Click on the layer itself, on the empty space preferably. And this information here, you can align all of those things to the right, just to have the perfect alignment, okay? And you can push all those things a little bit up, okay? Because we have a little bit of space there. And now the last piece of information that we need is the logos. But before we move, I would like to show you something very cool. We can select, for example, dancing light here, okay? By the way, I think the ballet show is too big. I'm not sure yet. But let's suppose that you want to change the color of the dancing light. You have two options. You can double click on this guy, change the color here, which is one possibility. You can let me see. You can also do this kind of thing, just selecting the thing here and changing another color here. It's faster. You don't have to double click to select everything. Or if you want, you can apply a color overlay. This color overlay is a effect over the original object. Okay, that might be one way to do that. If you want, you can apply a color overlay to all the text, because let's suppose that all the text are going to be eventually white. You can do that. So color overlay on the group, okay? And we can choose white. As you can see, everything is quite cool. If you want to increase the reading of this, we can add another effect. You can go here and drop shadow. In this case, I don't want a shadow like, you know, going beyond the object. So let's select, for example, like multiply, which is the normal way that shadow works. We can select the black shadow and we can put a smaller size. And if you're not seeing, there is something already happening with the image, okay? You can work with the spread as well, because the idea is to detach this thing from the background, okay? And as you can see, the reading improves because we are doing this thing, you know. If you want, you can go to opacity and you can increase the opacity to make even more pronounced the effect. But I think this is about 40 is good enough to this effect. So now we have this, and the last piece of information that we need to bring to this composition is the logo of the theater and the logo of the state. Here I am in Illustrator and I have both logos here. They are vector logos, by the way. If you hold Ctrl Y, you can see the lines forming the logo. So this is the Landestheater Linz and this is the Upper Austria logo. All of them, as you can see, Ctrl Y, they are vectors. We are going to talk about Illustrator, so don't worry about that. I just open up the SVG. You might have another format that's not important at all, okay? You don't have to do anything. Just select the logo, Ctrl C inside Illustrator, and Ctrl V inside Photoshop. And this is probably the most important part, okay? We have a lot of different ways to bring information from Illustrator to Photoshop, and this is the part where you should know which one you should choose, okay? So we never ever bring things from Illustrator to Photoshop using pixels, okay? You might choose path, shape layers if you want to do something else or something specific inside Photoshop, but my advice to you is try to stick with smart objects. You don't have to add to your library. This is absolutely useless unless you want to use this thing in the future over and over and over. But you don't have to do that. Always choose smart objects, okay? If you do that, every time you bring something to Photoshop like this, you will have the logo here. This is the vector logo, and you just have to use this information. And if you need to change something, let's suppose that you change something here. For example, I might change this shapes here because, you know, they are white. Of course, I can deal with that pretty easy inside Photoshop. But I might change those things. I want to open up Illustrator again. If you double click here, Photoshop is going to send you back to Illustrator. And you can edit whatever you want, and then you just have to close this file, and you will see that Photoshop is going to have the updated version of your logo with your changes, okay? So this is the same thing. So this is a vector smart object. So everything we do with this guy is not going to affect in any possible way. So this thing is protected. And again, if you want to change things, you just have to double click and you are going to open up this logo inside Illustrator. So it's totally protected, okay? I'm going to bring the other one, and I'm going to fix this small problem, and I'm going to position the logos here and try to find a place to better position this information. So we finally reached this final result. There's a lot of things that I would like to change, but let me hit Ctrl R to hide my rulers. Let me hide this thing here. And if you hit Ctrl, comma, you can hide the guides. By the way, view, show guides. Okay, this is the shortcut. And this is the final piece. And the only thing I did was to create a folder, like a group, to put the logos inside. Okay. On the back of the logos, I painted a layer a little bit. And I also put a little bit of color and then use motion blur. So something very close to what I did on the background. So there's a lot of color. If you want, I kind of don't like that this thing going way too up, you know? So we can go to a brush with no hardness, a little bit bigger, and we can try to paint just a little bit to kind of hide a little bit of this part here, just to put the logos inside. You know, I was just looking for a place to position the logos, and I kind of solved the problem. So the rest of the layer is black, of course, because there's nothing there. And I have this part here, this very small portion with some lights bleeding, and at the same time showing the logos. And one can say, oh, could I change the colors of the logos? Yeah, you cannot, because sometimes the client requires that the logo be preserved on a certain way. Sometimes it requires a lot of contrast, and this is not an ideal solution. I create something just to better read the black, you know, put on a brighter spot without hiding a lot of information about the poster itself. But this is the final result. So I'm going to explain on our next class what I expect from you. And here on this video, I show you a lot of techniques, a lot of ways to solve problems. And I really hope that you enjoy see me doing this work. And I hope that you can also use these techniques on your own work. Okay, so see you in the next class. Bye-bye.